go out there, complain and cry about somebody not calling their hit.
Shooting just to shoot. I don't know what exactly he was trying to accomplish.
But you're standing out of cover. What's the point? You know, it's almost like it was like a freebie. What I want to recommend for you, Sean, is to get in a yoga class. Hey everybody, welcome back to KWA Insight. Now that we've gone through the Challenger Series, what's going to happen now is the people who advance from the Challenger Series will now face the returning contestants from previous seasons. So I guess the question is now, you know, does it affect the competition in any way that the challengers are a little bit more fresh? They've played the format, whereas the returning contestants, they might be suffering from a little bit of ring rust. What's your take on that?
You know, I think that definitely comes into play. You know, these new challengers might not be as skilled as, you know, the past veterans, but, you know, they're fresh. They got this in their mind. The people who did well and excelled should be able to keep on pushing on and exceeding, you know, their possibly own expectations and the viewers' expectations as well. I'm excited to see what goes on.
So now that we moved past the Challenger Series and moving into a more, I guess, heated part of the competition, there's some very interesting matchups coming up. One being the matchup between Roman and Scotto. These two actually didn't make it past the Challenger portion of the series. However, there were 2 spots that dropped out. So they kind of get a second lifeline. What do you see there, and what do you think can be a little bit different this time, considering that they got a second chance?
Yeah, so I think they definitely need to take advantage of the second chance, learning from their mistakes, possibly focusing a little bit more on the objectives, you know, gaining a lead through these points, and just not repeating the same mistakes that caused them to just barely miss making the first final cut. You know, I think Scotto can definitely learn from a couple times where he was more focused on the gun going down. You know, he had that instance where Christian, you know, pushed up on him. So possibly, you know, learning to push through whatever comes at you, a gun malfunction, you know, another player's aggressiveness, and push past that. And what do you think about Roman?
Yeah, like Roman, you know, I know his play style pretty well. He's a killer. He's very aggressive. But again, sometimes you get one-track minded, you get tunnel vision just on the kill, as opposed to working towards the objectives, you know. What's interesting is that Roman is actually prospecting for SYG right now, and the position that I would like him to play is probably more objective based. So it's something that I had in mind, and after seeing this, it's something that I'm definitely gonna have him work on, you know, because objectives and points are very important in competition. It's not just about eliminations. And he's a young player, but he's got a lot to learn, and hopefully this experience will teach him something, and hopefully in this next set of games he'll make those adjustments in order for him to advance. So in the matchup between Cam and Rhett, my key takeaway was it all boils down again to attitude and mindset. I kind of felt like Rhett got frustrated really early on, took it out on Cam, kind of took a turn for the worse. It became a little bit negative, a little bit like there was something brewing, you know. If you open up that can of worms, you still need to be able to maintain focus, and you still need to be able to play your game. You know, you can't just go out there, complain and cry about somebody not calling their hit. How do you think Cam kind of like fed off of that? And like, because you know you do know him pretty well. He is on your team. Like, you think this worked out in his favor, or do you think that he was a little bit showboaty, or like, what was your take on that?
Yeah, so my take on it, Cam being on our team and, you know, having that personal insight to him. Typically when Cam's going up against someone and he starts to see that frustration, that, you know, that anger, you know, them getting out of their own style of gameplay, he takes advantage of that. As you can clearly see in the gameplay, you know, he started playing on that. He started, you know, talking up, you know, the people viewing from the window. Yep. Started talking to himself. You know, there's moments there where he's skipping across as soon as he gets them out. And that's obviously done right in front of Rhett's face, where he can see it, where he can feel that energy. Yeah. So you watching this match, you can see Rhett getting angry, frustrated, and that building, and Cam just starting to have fun, you know, laughing about it, skipping, waving to him. You know, this definitely played an advantage for Cam. And you saw that over the course of the match get worse, and, you know, throwing it back to some of the previous matches that we've seen with Joker. Once a player starts to get into their own head, it typically doesn't go well for them.
Right.
I don't know if it's just that these players can't focus that frustration and anger, like you were saying, and get better, learn from it, possibly change what they're doing, rather than that just, getting to a negative point and hurting you.
Right. It was more like Rhett was trying to just make it obvious that he wasn't happy about certain things. There was moments where obviously, telling him to call his hit, cursing at him, throwing mags at him, like those are signs of somebody who's just, like you said, they're in their own head. They're not focused on the game. They're not even focused on their opponent. So, when things like that happen, things don't go your way, you got to be able to maintain focus. You got to be able to slow it down a bit and understand why you're there. You're not there to put a spotlight on somebody you think is playing shady, or if somebody's kind of like picking on you. Basically, he got under his skin, and then he couldn't dial it back. That's all he was focused on. He's probably just angry the whole time. All he saw was red, and he just wasn't able to focus on shifting gears and like trying a different tactic, as opposed to just feeling a certain way about it. Feelings are not going to get you anywhere. You got to act on it. You got to make something happen.
This next match is going to be Scotto versus Roman. We previewed this match, and we're looking to see who takes advantage of this second chance.
So much like Scotto's previous match, you have to wonder yourself, in this case, you think Scotto won the match, or do you think that Roman lost the match?
I personally think that Roman lost it by a couple different things, but mainly because he didn't go after the objectives. He started getting down on points, and as a player, you got to be aware of that. You got to, whether you're asking for it or they're giving you the scores, you need to make yourself aware of how far you're down, if you are down, and adjust your gameplay to that. There was one specific instance where Roman was defending, Scotto was attacking, and as an attacker, if you eliminate the defender, you get a big chunk of points right there.
50 points, right?
Yeah,
50 points.
Yeah. So as a defender, you got to be aware of that. You're already down. The last thing you want to do is give the attacker those extra boosts of points. And he was clearly just standing up behind a barrier, not using his height to an advantage, getting a little bit lower. And Scotto on the other side, took advantage of his height.
Yeah, Scotto obviously being a much taller opponent, Roman being a smaller stature here, you kind of don't want to give him that advantage. It's like a higher ground type thing. Yeah. So basically, if you're just standing behind cover, but you're standing out of cover, what's the point? It's almost like it was like a freebie for Scotto. Yeah, and I think it was also Roman's inability to kind of focus on the math of things. Was he aware at that moment that he was behind? Was he aware that he was gonna give Scotto 50 points by not being defensive? I guess like we only know, only Roman knows at this point, and hopefully like he can like kind of look back on this and make those adjustments, because you don't want to give people free points. You might as well not even pick up a gun, just run out there and get shot. In this matchup, we're going to see Q go up against Ghost. After watching this matchup, we got to say something about intention and accuracy. For me, I felt like every time Ghost brought his gun up, I wasn't sure if he knew what he was shooting at. I felt like he was kind of just throwing something out there into the universe to see if something would bounce back at him, or if Q would like, reveal himself.
Call and response.
Right. So this is one of those matchups where accuracy and intention really count. I felt like Alex was shooting at a whole lot of nothing, and anytime Q put his gun up, he knew exactly what he was doing. What's your take on that?
I think this kind of plays into what Ghost's role is on his team. In a team setting, he's typically a back player, normally snake side, and that kind of played into it, where most of the time he was in the back, he was just shooting just to shoot, like you're saying. Q was very methodical, had well placement as far as cover, and just overall, Q played a very accurate, very safe, very methodical game, versus Alex seemed kind of not knowing where Q is at half of the time, shooting just to shoot, trying to create cover for himself, or I don't know what exactly he was trying to accomplish with just shooting at nothing.
It goes back to our conversation of what we're going to see out of Q in the future matchups. I was hoping that he would get a matchup that would push him a little bit harder. Unfortunately, like Ghost's history in this series, that the last time he played injured. you know. So I was hoping that when he came back and he recovered, that maybe we see a little bit more spark coming out of him. But again, like he kind of just played like a support role in a 1v1 situation. So I don't think I think Ghost needs to really figure out his style in a 1v1 game. He might be very adept at what he does in a team setting, but that doesn't translate here. So, you know, good luck on Q's part for being able to pick Ghost apart. I just wish we got to see more of a physical challenge for Quentin.
And maybe this is a good thing for Q. Maybe he's kind of ramping up. This game was a little bit more, not necessarily difficult, but able to work on kind of movement on the field, grabbing objectives a little more than the first game. So this might possibly help him kind of ramping up for the next opponent. That might be a little more difficult.
Yeah, so it looks like he put his thinking cap on and focused more a little bit on movement.
In this match, it's Master versus Student in Gunner versus Sean. One portion that I wanted to highlight is going to be during the second round when Gunner's attacking and Sean is defending. Sean uses cover very, very well. This is not very obvious to maybe the casual viewer. There's a portion where Gunner is on his right side, Sean is on his right side. He locates Gunner, shifts over to the left, and when he shifts over to that left, he uses that small L barrier to block his lower half, and then along the left there's a longer L, and he uses it to kind of shield his left side. So him as a right-handed shooter has both cover on the left as well as low, meaning the target that Gunner has to aim is very, very small, along with the sliver. So as he's moving back and forth behind cover, it's a very difficult target to shoot. And from Sean's perspective, he's got Gunner both covered on the left, as well as if he jumps over to that right-hand side.
So it's a little bit unorthodox. You know, people are not used to thinking this way. The common, the misconception is that cover is only what's in front of you. But cover is also something that blocks your opponent's line of sight. You still need to be very mindful of your opponent's line of sight and where their gun's aiming. You know, just because you think that maybe it'll save you a little bit, if you overexpose that right shoulder, you can still get clipped. What Sean did well was every time he took a shot, he would snap back in towards his left, and Gunner would see absolutely nothing. So great use of cover by Sean. Still a little bit with the mouth breathing. What I want to recommend for you, Sean, is to get in a yoga class, really focus on that breathing. I told you to get in the gym, but to really focus on that breathing, just take a yoga class and just, you know, really focus on that, because we do still hear you getting winded, especially if you're doing jump shots, which we'll get into next. Yeah, so one other thing I thought Sean did really well, it's related to this, and that's his use of cover, it's his use of height. We saw a similar situation between Scotto and Roman, where Roman also kind of was a little bit lazy on defense. In this situation, we see Gunner in the same spot, but we see that Sean is in a nice tall barrier. He's comfortable behind it. He's taking jump shots. It's a shot that I see him using a lot at Tac City when he's playing. It's something that he practices a lot, and very precise in the way that he was able to just surgically remove Gunner from the game. So like both you and I are very fond of jump shots. What's your take on that?
It's something that you can definitely tell that Sean's comfortable with. He's taller, he's more athletic. A lot of times I see newer players trying to create that same jump shot, and a lot of times they're not aiming, they expose themselves too much, and a more experienced player on the other side will take that head off, you know. So it's all about being comfortable with your gun, comfortable with your body, knowing your limits. If you can't do a jump shot, it's best not to try it, because all you're doing is exposing yourself and landing back down on that same barrier. By the time you land, sometimes you'll have that more experienced player come around, and it's too late for you to adjust. So just something to keep in mind for newer players who might see this and want to replicate it. Know your limits.
Yeah, and here we see one experienced player going against somebody who's on the come up, you know, and I think it speaks to what we're saying about Sean. Like, we're definitely seeing some growth, even as this event progresses. So I'm very excited to see what we see next from him.
Thanks for watching KWA Insight. We'll be finishing off the last of the preliminary rounds next episode.